We are here in New York City having breakfast with a Serbian spy.
Rolling.
Is it retort? Who's introducing?
I'm
Me?
just waiting until you guys
Johnny.
stop talking. Hey, here we are in the Spartan Barn in Amy, Vermont. Here we are in Pittsfield, Vermont, in the Amy Barn doing Spartan Up podcast. We've got some great people here. I'm going to start behind the camera. You never see her, but she's fantastic. Marian, our producer. Coming around from there, Colonel Tim Nye, Sephra, Joe DeSena, myself, Johnny Waite.
A charming
and
guy.
well, actually, you know what? I'm really excited about this one because this guy runs a program called The Art of Charm, where he teaches you how to be charming.
Have you guys
engaging.
gone?
No, I haven't.
No, and clearly I haven't. That's why I'm excited. I want to hear from you what this guy does and how I can get some of this.
Yeah, so basically, just like we run these crazy camps in Vermont, or we run the races, he saw a need to take this next generation that's used to sitting in front of a screen and communicating via screen and typing, and teach them how to be charming face-to-face, how to look people in the eye, how to get ahead. Basically, it's advanced Dale Carnegie. For those of you listening that have never heard of Dale Carnegie, look him up. He wrote the original How to Win Friends and Influence People.
City having breakfast with a Serbian spy, Jordan Harbinger. You're from Serbia?
No, I'm not from Serbia, and I'm definitely not a Serbian spy.
But something happened in Serbia?
Yeah, actually.
But you run Art of Charm.
I do. I run the Art of Charm. Primarily, that's my primary gig.
Tell me about Serbia.
So when I was in Serbia, I was an English teacher, but I had a fellowship from the Department of Defense. And when you're in Serbia, in order to live there for a long period of time, you have to live with Serbian people. At least you did back in 2005. So you have to go to the police station and tell them where you're living. And so I had my friends and other relationships that I built previously vouching for me and saying, yeah, he's living with me. And the police started to spot check and show up and say, where's this teacher? And why isn't he in your house? And oh, he's out. So one day the detectives actually showed up and said, where is this guy? Where's his room? And the woman that I was supposed to be living with said, okay, he doesn't live here. And they said, if you don't find him, we're coming back for you and you're gonna answer some questions. So she called me and said, you're not living here anymore. So at that point, I thought about straightening it out by going to the police station and saying, straightening the whole thing out. But Serbia...
What year was this?
It was 2005, 2004. So they're not the kind of cops where you walk in and go, hey, I heard you've been looking for me. What can I do for you? So I just avoided it, which is not really a good strategy generally. But I figured they're not gonna come after me.
And they put you under the heavy lamps down in the basement?
Kinda, yeah. What happened was I was at a concert.
Did you fold under questioning?
I'll get there. Basically, yes. I'll get there. But I was at a concert and the black Jeep rolled up and started checking people, and they eventually found me and my friend. And my friend had a big mouth. And so they stopped us, they found out who we were, and they said, oh, we've been looking for you. We were wondering where you were. So they took us down to a bar that was kind of abandoned. And there's like wires everywhere and broken glass, and I'm like, this is where it ends for me. And my friend's getting beat up because he can't seem to shut the hell up, right? He just is panicking and saying everything wrong. And I'm trying to distract the guy and saying like, oh, we're going to this restaurant tonight, when we get out of here. You want to come with us? And the guy's like, he's crossing wires, because he's actually on some sort of substance I found as well. I think he was a little bit of an addict himself. So I started to talk about food, culture, drinks, and he started to...
These are your anti-interrogation techniques?
Yeah, they're ad-libbed anti-interrogation techniques that I was trying to make up on the spot, essentially. Right. And he started to say, all right, well, we don't know if you're a spy. We think that you are, so let's just have a chat and straighten out. So I started to take control of the conversation, or at least I thought I was. I'm sure he's got training in that department, too. And we started talking about food and booze that they have and
things they can relate to.
Things they can relate to and
women, food, and drinks.
Exactly. I left out the women part. Yeah, of course. And I said, I could probably use a drink right now. And he grunts, gets up, leaves, comes back, and I think, all right, I've got to jump this guy when he gets back. That's the only chance I have. So I'm getting ready to.
And you have no weapons.
Make a move. Nothing.
Right.
I see him walking.
Your mid-20s.
Yeah, 24.
You're 24. You certainly could handle Serbian police bare hand.
No problem, right? so I'm seeing him walk back down the hall, and he's got like a club in his hand, and I'm like, great, this is a crappy way to go. After a lame concert, at 8 a.m., it's really early, stayed out all night, and he comes back, and he's got, right when I'm about to make my move, he's got a bottle of booze, and I'm like, I'm either getting hit with this or we're drinking. So he sets it down and pours a couple of drinks, and we're sitting there drinking, and I can hear my friend and the other guy not getting along so well in the other room.
Right.
And we're drinking for a while, and I'm thinking, okay, this might end up being something that goes south, sideways, especially for my friend, so I got to find a break, an opportunity here. So I start saying, listen, man, I'm feeling sick. I can't keep drinking. I've been out all night. We haven't eaten. I just need some water. And there's clearly no water anywhere in this place. The pipes are hanging out of the wall, and the sink it looks really dirty, so I'm hoping they don't try to make me drink anything that comes out of this building. So he goes, all right. And he gets up and goes back to where he came from. And pretty soon, after an eternity, I hear doors slamming on the car and them pulling out of the driveway. And I'm thinking, oh my God, they just left. And I don't know if they went to, I assume they didn't go to Rite Aid to get us water. They probably just gave up on the situation in retrospect. But I ran, grabbed my friend, and we got the hell out of there. And it turns out they kept looking for us after that because they weren't planning to just let us go. But we ended up getting to the regular police, who ended up getting us to the embassy, and that's kind of
It would be a less believable story if something similar didn't happen to me. And where the hell was it? It wasn't Istanbul. It was in Hungary. Something like that happened to me where we got beat up and
really
thrown in jail. And long story.
What year was that?
Had to be 98, 99.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I mean, a lot of people forget that the other side of the Iron Curtain, the politics may have changed, but the way
the people didn't.
And certainly the police force is usually the last entrenched bit to go.
So how do you take that experience in Serbia and turn it into this business, Art of Charm?
Well, what I'd been doing previous to that is I was in law school, so I joined this Wall Street firm, and this guy who hired me, his name was Dave, and he was never there. And as you know, lawyers bill hours. That's how they make money. If you've ever hired a lawyer, you see these little 6-minute increments.
I hire them all the time, and I hate them all.
Yeah, and you just cry on the inside or on the outside because you see the guy went to take a leak, was thinking about your case, $185 or whatever. Yeah. And so I was doing that and doing the financial sector stuff. And I hated it, obviously. I mean, I'm not cut out for that stuff. And my HR department said, how's your mentorship program going with Dave? And I said, it's terrible. I haven't even seen the guy. And they made him take me out for coffee. So I figured this is how I get fired, right? Making a partner take me out for coffee by complaining to HR.
It's in Serbia. You might not come back.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Right. So he takes me out for coffee, and he says, ask me anything. And he's hanging out on his BlackBerry, like totally disinterested. And I said, all right, screw it. I don't care about this job enough. How come you're never in the office, but people say you make more money than the other partners? And he says, what? Do people really say that? And I'm like, yeah, I heard it somewhere, now I'm trying to back out of it. And he says, well, I bring in all the deals. I bring in all the business. I have all the relationships with all the clients. And I thought, okay, this is what I need to do because I'm not going to sleep under my desk like a lot of these guys. I'm certainly not I'm far from the smartest guy here, and I'm probably one of the worst employees they've ever had, one of the worst attorneys on staff they've ever had. So if I'm going to get to the top of the game, I need to learn how to take the relationship skills and kind of like the stuff, in Serbia and elsewhere that I've been using and really lean into it. So I started studying psychology, persuasion, influence. I was doing jury selection, consulting type of stuff, and really looking at a lot of these different human aspects of law, and started the podcast, The Art of Charm.
To start to understand what makes people tick?
Yeah, exactly. Because I knew that was my highest lever. And I think a lot of people don't realize that that's always going to be your highest lever unless you are absolutely number one in your field, which there's only a handful, or if that, of those people. And by definition, only one at the top, right? Or you're just a workhorse, which means you've sacrificed your family, your whole life revolves around this profession, and even then,
yeah, I think you're right. I think the person that has the amazing personality that attracts people, men and women, and people want to be around them, it looks like they work less.
It does.
Right?
Yeah, it looks like they work. And that was the thing with Dave is he's a guy from Brooklyn. He had a tan. So I'm like, what the hell is going on here?
Right.
He's got jiu-jitsu going on, golf. He's going on charity cruises. When I say he was never in the office, I thought he worked from home.
Right.
But the truth was his job, if you calculate the amount of hours it took him to bring in $1 million deal versus what he would have earned the same amount of hours just billing, just doing documents and stuff, it was no contest. He probably made 10 times more for the firm than the other attorneys.
Sure. So it's funny because I think about, I have young children, 4 young children. I think I want them to learn how to lay bricks. I want them to learn how to do plumbing. I want them to learn all those skills. But one of the biggest skills is like the Tony Robbins skills.
Right.
Which is what you're talking about here.
Exactly.
Right? That ability to really be attractive from a personality standpoint. So what do you teach people?
Well, we start from the bottom. So people come in from all walks of life to our live training. Of course, the listeners to the podcast could be pretty much anybody, but our live training in Los Angeles is we teach guys exclusively. And the reason for that is because if you put one woman in a room full of guys, the guys clam up and their insecurities and their ego just takes over.
Right.
But if you isolate that and we can start to get them vulnerable, we can figure out where the screws are loose and tighten those things up.
Got it.
And so where we start is nonverbal communication generally. So we change the way you sit, stand, walk, and talk. And it's not fake, it's subtractive. So instead of adding layers to your personality like, oh, you got to say this cool thing, and you got to be that way, we get rid of the whole self-talk that might be negative. We're like, what are people thinking of me? What are people looking at? Oh, do I look weird right now? Do I seem cool? Do I look tough? That stuff that's going on in your head that's really messing up your self-expression. If you're constantly if you're constantly micromanaging that, then the problem that you run into is that you're not actually being yourself. So people always criticize and say, oh, just be yourself. It's literally impossible to do that if you're worried about what she's thinking, what he's thinking, what everybody else is thinking. How do I look? How am I coming across? If you're doing that constantly, you're being everybody but yourself. You're being this weird, manufactured, super tense, uptight version that is not going to be very persuasive, attractive.
So how do well, why don't we take a break so I can eat a little bit?
Sure.
And then when you don't eat breakfast, and then we'll I want to dive in deeper there.
Excellent.
All right.
I hope you're not sitting still while you listen. If you are, you better get a burpee break in.
How do you know which people have the potential to be successful in the program, and how are people who just say, hey, save me money?
First of all, before you answer that, we don't even know who he is asking the questions.
Right.
But that's okay. He's just a guy eating at the restaurant.
Right. So the way that I screen for people who are going to be successful in the program is, and keep this in mind, I'll take anybody from the Green Beret or elite sales guy who's very social, understands people by mandate, and I'll take anybody who has a little bit of difficulty. A lot of our clients are software engineers that are like, listen, man, I was fine in high school or maybe a little shy, and now I've been in a friggin' cubicle for 20 years. And they get divorced and they're like, or they've never been married, and they're just starting from ground zero. What I won't have is somebody who has maybe sociopathic tendencies where they say things like, I need to get people to trust me so that I can make money. And the way, and they don't seem to have the ethics behind that. If you're selling a product you believe in, that's one thing. If you just want to make money by selling snake oil and you need the art of charm sort of skill set to get there, I will screen you out.
I guess the other question would be,
For those people just listening, the guy in the restaurant is asking another question. He doesn't have a microphone, but go ahead.
that question is, how do you get, in other words, what do you consider to be success?
So is there a time where you can release this person into the wild and to go run with their new personality you've taught them? Or is it like Scientology where it just goes on forever?
Sure, yeah. Well, first I want to make a quick clarification. We don't teach them a new personality. We get rid of all the crap that's keeping their real personality from coming out. So we don't add to them at all. We subtract.
Give me an example.
Sure. So it was kind of like what I was mentioning before with the subtractive process, where a lot of times, let's take a dating example. So a guy might walk into a room and he sees women there and he's like, okay, I've got to stand up straight and get my body language right, and I'm going to act really tough, and I'm going to talk cool stories about how I've got this gadget and that car and this house and this property, because he's trying to act impressive. Instead of letting his nonverbal communication and personality do the work, he's leaning on external sources of validation. And that's actually a turn on to emotionally intelligent people. And women are about 20 times more emotionally intelligent than men are, generally. And I'm probably underreporting that. I think women are sharp as tacks when they look for these types of tells for a guy who's not confident. And so we'll actually get to the underlying causes of why is he saying that? Why is he doing that? Why does he feel the need to seek approval in
Is
that
it usually
way?
insecurity?
It's always insecurity.
Right.
It's always some base level of insecurity that comes from some impact from earlier on. And I don't mean like, how do you feel about your mom? I mean things, and it could be that, but usually it's, well, I lost a girl to a guy in college and I don't know why that happened. So I'm going to assume it's because I'm short or because I don't have money or because that guy had a cooler car than me. So you just put it on whatever your mind sees as a potential answer, even though it probably has nothing to do with that.
Oh, there's a guy in the restaurant again asking a question.
Fascinated by the conversation.
You're married.
Yeah. But, for the other guys.
What is the number one trait or problem that presents itself when you're bringing in a new client, like that you got to fix? Is it insecurity? What is it?
Yeah. And I just want to be super clear that it's not just dating stuff. 30 to 40% of our clients are married, and even more than that are in long-term committed relationships.
Yeah. It could be a guy from Google.
Yeah.
Or Twitter, or someplace and he just wants to have a better business relationship with his boss.
Yeah.
Or a Delta Force guy that's been behind the scope of a weapon for a long time, right?
Yeah. There's a lot of that. In fact, I was telling you offline before the show that we had Delta guys come through and we didn't even know about it until 2 years later.
They disguised themselves?
They didn't wear fake mustaches per se. At least I don't think they were fake. But they just said, I work on tractors and other heavy equipment. And I thought, wow, that's kind of boring. And this is a really sharp guy. And then turns out later on,
they were Delta.
I found out through other friends. Like, oh, hey, did you hear Tim got discharged? From what? John Deere? I mean, what are you talking about?
Right.
And oh no, he's an elite military Army guy. And I called him and I said, listen, man, what are you talking about? And then he dropped hints and still didn't tell me what he did. And I found out by prying from other folks what it was that he did. Even then, no details. So a lot of folks come through.
So it's across the spectrum.
It's across the spectrum,
yeah.
And the biggest issue, to answer your question, that guys come in with is, I gotta zoom way out for this because it really is very specific to the guy that comes in. But the one that I see the most often is approval-seeking behavior, where people think that whatever they're doing, it's not enough. Whoever they're being is not enough. And I don't mean that in like the woo-woo universe provides type way. I mean that as, if you're a father and you're a husband and you have your business, you're probably still thinking, I need to do more. I need to help more people. I need to be a better dad. I need to be a better businessman. I need to work harder, do more. If you're really living in that all the time, you've got a base level of stress and anxiety and inadequacy that's going to screw with everything that you're doing.
How do you take somebody who's not confident, right? Because that's what you're describing. And how do you get them confident?
It starts with nonverbal feedback loops, and what I mean by that is if you're hunched over all the time, you have bad posture, bad body language. I think it might have been you or maybe Ben Greenfield who talks about how that actually affects hormone levels and things like that. So your body responds to your physiology, or your body is your physiology, and your mindset responds to that as well. So I'm sure you've seen those studies where, like, if you have terrible posture, terrible everything, right? Yep. I know we're both like, then you start to feel sad. You have higher incidences of things like depression, and that goes both ways. It's not just one channel where your mindset says, I'm sad, and you slunk over. It's if you're that way all the time due to poor physiology, it affects the way that your brain treats your mindset.
Can smile and fake it till you make actually happy. And so I agree with that.
And so we start creating habit in that department, and this is maybe 1% of what's done at boot camp, at AOC boot camp, but we'll take this sort of principle and we'll form habits. So like one thing that I can give people watching is every time you walk through a doorway, first of all, if you sit up straight like this and you get your head aligned, your spine aligned, your pelvis aligned, every time you walk through a doorway, if you remember to straighten up to this position, put a smile on your face, have your arms not crossed like a lot of people are living with, you have open and positive body language. And what that does is it makes you look friendly, it makes you feel better, upright, more confident, and happier. And so if you do that every time you walk through a doorway, then you create a habit of, and I mean even in your own house, not just when you go out and come in. If you do this even in your own house, you start to build the habit of being that way all the time, because how often do you go through a doorway? And so once you have that going on constantly, your brain starts to get a positive feedback loop because people treat you differently.
Right. And then you'll know to do that again.
Exactly.
Right.
And so once people are starting to treat you like an open, friendly, confident person who's friendly and open,
you seek more of that.
Right. You seek more of that, but also you start to respond differently, right? If I look shut down, quiet, sad, and closed, people don't say, "Oh, good morning, sir. How are you?" I mean,
I'm visualizing
it's
two dogs coming up to you, right? One's a golden retriever wagging its tail, happy as can be,
Exactly.
versus a dog that's just kind of
right. You stay away
visible.
from the
Right,
one,
right.
and the other one you're like, "Hey, come on
Right,
in,"
right.
and you're petting them. That's a great analogy. I might have to steal that.
Hey, I'll let you use it. Dollar a use.
No problem. I can afford that. And depending on how many you find out about. And so what happens then is, since people are treating you differently, you start to think, oh, well, I am this person, right? And in truth, you are. You weren't born sad and lonely and tired and overworked and anxious. You just got that way through terrible habits. And one of the things that we have as the core of our charm is, if you're not creating good habits, you're creating bad habits. And I'm sure that meshes over with what you teach people as well.
Yeah, no,
if you're eating like crap, if you're not training, if you're negative and down and depressed, that's becoming a default. That's becoming a habit. So people think, oh, I need to create some good habits. You're already creating habits. They're just terrible.
The wrong ones.
They're the wrong ones.
Yeah. And what you could do, if you'd like, just to add this to your program, is have people come work with us. We could put them out on a 100-mile run, and that will give them confidence, right? They get through that. Come through the door, you're feeling like, you know what, I can get through 100 miles. I can get through anything.
I think the key is if they get through that, right? That's the tricky
They
part.
have no choice. You put them out in the woods. They got to get back.
Or they get eaten by coyotes.
Exactly.
Right, okay, I see.
That's it.
Maybe that can be our advanced program.
That could be the advanced program.
I want to make sure they come back through us before they get eaten by coyotes.
We're very progressive
hey,
here.
Joe, I want to find out the story. You started to tell him a story and then didn't, and you mentioned at the start of the podcast.
Yeah.
I want to hear the story where you had to charm your way out of a situation.
Yeah, so we went to Hungary, me and a bunch of friends, and
Bunch of friends and I.
went to Hungary.
Charming.
and one of my friends was on a later flight. We are told that you have to go to the bathhouses when you get to Budapest.
You do.
And so,
Budapest.
again, if you know my background, for over a decade I cleaned swimming pools at a young age. That was my business. So we get to the bathhouses. It's about 7:30 in the morning because we got an early flight in. And it's not like one of those clean pools I used to clean. There are guys walking around that aren't the fittest. They're older men, and they have the equivalent of like a napkin you'd have in a restaurant with a string tied to the back in front of them. And the water is like a murky gray. Yeah. The place stinks. The tiles falling off the walls. They are laying people on massage tables and blasting them with the equivalent of a fire hose. And so we decide quickly, this is not for us. You know, it was like 5 cents to get in. It wasn't, right? Again, we're Spartans. Not that we need fancy places, but it just didn't
resonate.
It didn't resonate.
Maybe sanitary?
It was unsanitary. So anyway, we head to the only place we could find, which again is rare for me, a bar. We go into the bar. It's 8 a.m. and there's nobody in the bar, as you can imagine, but us. And a girl walks over, looks like the waitress, and we try to speak our language. She's speaking her language. We can't really communicate well. Well, we get 3 or 4 beers. I forget how many. I think there were 3 of us. My friend, we were waiting for him to fly in. We get 3 beers. We're there a half hour. We're leaving the bar. Now we're getting jet lag. We're going to go hit the hotel and get some sleep and wait for my buddy. They hand us a bill. It's $400. We had 3 beers. So I said, I'm not paying that.
Yeah.
And they said, yes, you are. And we're getting to this little scuff. The gate closes on the bar, and a couple of Hungarian or Russian, I don't know who, show up, and they handcuff us. And they bring us to our hotel to get our passports, because we had dropped off our passports. And on my way in, I hit the concierge as the police are dragging me to my room, and I write a quick note to my friend that's still coming. Hey, it looks like we're going to be in prison when you get to the hotel. Find us. Yeah. Anyway, they take us off, and they go through the police station about 300 yards into a dirt road in the backyard and throw us into a cell. There's 3 of us in this cell. And already one of my friends is starting to break under questioning.
It was him.
And we're in this cell for 14 hours. Okay? And all I could think is, I know my buddy landed. Why isn't he here? Why hasn't he gotten us out? Well, finally, they get a translator. We sort through it. We finally end up paying. They release us from the prison. We get back to the hotel. We get cleaned up. We look for our buddy. We find him. He is sitting at like a 5-star restaurant being serenaded. They're playing violins next to him. He's like, you're going to have to bleep this out. What the Why didn't you? He goes, what do I know about getting people out of jail?
So he had actually gotten your note?
He got the note. He goes, I don't know anything about getting anybody out of jail. I'm hungry.
Yeah. That thing about being the average of your 5 friends.
Yeah, there you go.
He'd be on the outside.
And that was the last time Joe ever went into a bar.
So
that's the last drink I ever had.
Yeah.
Great story, bro.
Yeah.
Now bring it back into the charming part.
Well, listen, in life, you've got to be able to sell. I had to get myself out of the prison. Yeah. I tried to get myself out of paying the $400. You sell your children. Your kids sell the mother to get.
You sell your children.
You sell ideas to your children.
You sell ideas to your children. You sell ideas to your children.
When you're traveling hungry, you may have to sell your child to get out of jail.
Everybody you communicate with, you're selling. I don't mean that in a negative way, but you're
sure.
trying to sell your ideas and concepts. And
I'm going to give a little less dramatic story, but one that happened to me that was exactly what you're talking about. After high school, before university, I went and surfed in Europe for a while. And I was taking my boards onto the plane, and my one board was about 1.5 inches too long, and they'd said to me, we can't put this board on the plane. You're going to have to pay X number, $100, whatever. And I came over to my dad. I was 18 years old, and I said, hey, Dad, I really need some help. Can you come over and please talk them into letting my board on the plane? And he looked at me and he said, really? You think that if you can't talk that board onto that plane, you're prepared to go and spend a year in Europe by yourself? I'm not good with that.
Wow.
And I had to go back over, and it took me 5 minutes, and of course I charmed them into it and everything else, and the board was on the plane. But that was a really good lesson. He's like, you're going to have to sell your way through life, son. Right. And one other quick story.
That's
a tough dad, though, too.
Yeah, it was good.
That's a good life lesson.
That really helped me years later. I was bringing 4 duffel bags full of shoes down to Nicaragua to donate to children down there. Literally 4 huge hockey bags full of shoes that friends had rallied for me.
Hockey bags are huge.
And I got to the airport, and I'm thinking, this is like thousands of dollars in extra luggage. How am I going to get this on there, right? So I walked up and I looked for the friendliest looking person at United.
Always.
Not a lot of friendly people at United.
No, that's not
Sorry, United.
Yeah.
They're not a sponsor or anything.
We would love to do a deal with American.
So anyway, I walked up and what a normal thought process is you go up and you just start, begging and whatever else. Instead, I enlisted this guy. I walked up and I intentionally put the smallest shoes on the top. And I walked up and the guy said, how are you doing? I said, I'll tell you I'm going to be doing even better in a minute because you and I are going to create a miracle. 10 minutes later, they're all on the plane, no charge.
It's the open.
That's the whole idea, right? Exactly. And so that art of charm, I'm not saying I'm the most charming person in the world. I can certainly learn a lot from our friend here. But in terms of, there are lots of opportunities to do that, and it is selling, and it is engaging people.
Quickly, as what you said, my mom, the queen, she always says the way you start's the way you finish, right? And I think that's really important. And for charming people and for just being these girls, Rising Appalachia, talk about charming people. They're amazing, have amazing music. And in one of their songs, they quote someone, I forget, but they say it's about being a humanist, just about being a human. And we're all equal. It's all the same team. Just be kind to those people around you. And, this guy, he says he's a social engineer, an interpersonal dynamics, social influence. It's great that we're in a time when those things need to be addressed, but I invite you just to talk to the people around you. Talk to your elders.
Look them in the eyes.
Look them in the eyes. Find show notes, video, and audio from this episode at SpartanUpPodcast.com/053.
Thank you for listening to another epic story of success. Follow us on Twitter at SpartanUpPod. The Spartan Up Podcast is brought to you by Spartan Race.
Make sure you're fueled up for your next Spartan race by joining our food of the day at Spartan.com.